that's right. I said I thought I'll bring out some real oldies. Iris petal. People say, do you have any artifacts around that are materials? You know, the other artifact, the materials we use that eventually go by the wayside. We always think, yeah, you can get a pencil. Can you get a pencil from 1935? Here we have some leads from 1935, and look at the boxes. They're even Art Deco. So here's one that's never been even sharpened, and in its original box. And then we have the leads showing, oh my gosh, they were in little wooden containers, each lead that was held by a pencil holder, each in a little container. And that's how these were saved. These were apparently never used. They were found in an illustrator's office who worked here back in the 50s. She had these. I don't know where she got them. Maybe she got them from somebody else. And when she retired, her office was cleaned out, I would say. And in cleaning out, they kind of let people know, if you want something, take it. Because unfortunately, anything we can't use, we're tossing. We're not just keeping extraneous stuff. So I grabbed some things from her office, including these just old leads that I said, I can't believe it. These are companies that no longer in business. They're gone, or they were absorbed by other businesses. The names changed. So they do represent a history. And that's why I said I'm keeping these. And we recently cleared out another office from an illustrator who'd been here even longer than myself. She was actually here when I came. And her office had really some very old tools in it as well. She was into anthro and archaeology and paleo, so she had a lot of different tools. She wasn't dealing with herbarium specimens. So we have drawers. Now I must explain, this is a dental supply cabinet, and as you can see by the design of it, it's probably from the Deco era, I should say, and it's probably it was a GSA surplus piece of equipment. They had so many of these hanging around. I think after the 60s, they just got rid of all this stuff. So they ended up in surplus areas, and I was able to grab actually 2 or 3 of these. And so I got these 2 and filled them. And I labeled them with an old Dymo labeler, which I don't think people have that anymore. But I labeled them so that I could save the archives of all these old illustrators. And here's another drawer. These again are pens from the illustrator that retired many years ago. So these represent an era of, a bygone era of pens and companies that are no longer in existence, or again, they were bought out and the name has changed. So I just said, I'm going to save these. They're unique. Some of the pens are just not made anymore.
And they're laying in trays.
And they're in these trays. These are the old lab trays. Everybody grabbed these old lab trays. They're actually for dissecting equipment, but they work perfectly for these pens and pencils. So I love storing them in these trays to keep. And actually, if we come over here, we can go to another era. We have paper samples galore. Some of the paper samples are old companies, again, from the past. We still have Crescent. These are some old paper samples from Crescent. This is a company, I think it sold its name to another company. And these were left over as paper samples. So I kept the whole assortment of paper samples. I said, you know what? Hey, I love keeping samples. and they represent things that we used. We used tracing vellum. We used the boards. Of course, we used white mostly, but we did use this tracing vellum. And they have tracing vellum. They have all kinds of different papers. And even more of them. I mean, just tons. Old samples. Oh, Strathmore. These are old Strathmore samples. And they keep their little watermark to show that it's from their company. So we have all of these paper samples. I just, like I said, I saved them from the past. And then we have some things. This is newer stuff. This is computers. But we do have this is a transition point. This is into what we call the mechanical era of, these are inking pens. Rotrings are still sold, although I noticed they're phasing out a lot of this. Rotrings came in because they were used by engineering draftsmen and architects, and they use them on drafting film. So a lot of these are still used by, they're used by botanical illustrators. Even some calligraphers might use these. They're a little harder to find, and the art stores are starting to wean them out and say, well, we're not carrying those anymore, because they just don't sell as well. And that's one of the issues with some of the equipment that I use, is it's just going out of style. Now here's some things that I really saved, and I said, I'm not changing any of this, because these are really relics from the old days. Every one of these pens is now vintage. So this is the vintage drawer. I actually worked with some of these nibs, and some of them are still in their original boxes. These are Joseph Gillott's from 291s. So some of these, this is the original box from England. A lot of these were English pens. And this was again from the retired illustrator. She had these all neatly sorted. These Spencerian. These are Spencerian points. So they were really made for calligraphers, but a lot of the artists ended up using them for fine art illustration. And then we get into some things that were really made for the fine art illustrator, the ones that do illustration. This is a card of a tit quill, which they stopped making this in the, I'd say, the mid-70s. I couldn't find any after 75. And even to extract this many in this condition, I had to kind of take from what the other illustrators left from their offices and combine them with mine, because I realized if I couldn't get them anymore, they're now vintage. So I made a card of kind of mostly new, I think used once, vintage tit quills. And of course they're all named after birds. This was a bird in England they called it a tit. It was probably, I don't know, a titmouse or something. All these quills, they have names of birds. Crow quill, eagle quill, hawk quill. But these, again, totally vintage. Can't find them anymore. And here's some other vintage ones. Again, I saved them all. There's some holders in here, vintage holders. Esterbrook's, another company, I found some of those. This is a brand that was bought out. It's called Hunt, and they made these, which are no longer made. This is a number 22. They make an assortment of pens, although they've stopped a lot of their pen points. The only reason we have anything is because we have calligrapher guilds in the U.S. that are a strong survivor of the industry. They keep saving, and this doesn't want to go in there, okay. So fortunately, they keep making things for calligraphers, but not for people like me. That would be unheard of. So I'm going to go down to some, old. No, we have things that maybe people don't, you have like a drawer. This is just stuff. So you have things here that, let's see, we have things here that people don't use anymore. So these are like, when people had, you held your paper together with brass paper fasteners. These are all things that I think I could turn over to American history because they're all part of American history. And then we have other things. I just save boxes and keep supplies, and then, so I even save I just save boxes, even if they're empty, I save them. Because I want to just keep old boxes and keep supplies in them. So everything here is really old boxes of just, unfortunately they're not being kept anymore, so I just save what I can. Now we're going to get down to some old inks. Oh my gosh. These are inks that were used for Radiant Watercolor, P.H. Martin's. These are fairly old. You can see by the printing on them, I think. They're from the 70s. And these again, they've settled, but I'm keeping them as an artifact. And then you have your Dymo labeler. I'm sure, I don't know if those are sold anymore. But you have all these old inks. And then you have some really old drafting supplies. These are drafting supplies. A lot of these came from the artists that did the archaeology and paleo because they worked with three-dimensional objects. And they had to measure things with different calipers. And these were the tools that we used to, look, it's a government, it's a government supply. Oh, probably from the old Government Supply Administration, GSA. In perfect shape. I actually use these to make circles and to make lines with a ruling pen by putting it in one of these calipers and turning it. So these were tools that I actually used. This is a set that was, again, another surplus set that I found that people used for drafting. I mean, basically made for draftsmen. And we have just lots of these. They're no longer, again, no longer use these calipers. These are obviously for measuring. And for plants, usually you weren't doing that because they're so flat, but you would for any other field. Just everything is.
Wow,
Oh my gosh, look at oh my gosh.
Wow.
This, oh my, actually I'm not even sure. This is the one that came from the office. So, these are little, oh my gosh. It is for measuring the depth of something. Oh, it is. Oh, that's amazing. So it is for measuring the depth, and it's in little vials. And you can put this little thing in it and unscrew it. I don't want to take it out right now, but obviously that's what it's for. Oh, it's an ancient tool. So this, again, manufacturing New York. A lot of these are made in the U.S. I think the Leroy's Tackrow. No, this is one I did use. Yeah, I used all of this. And then you have just Leroy lettering, which is just the sets used. I did use this one a lot. I used all these little pens, or ruling pens they call them. And you can adjust your flow of ink. That was how you made really thin lines. You just adjusted it so it barely came out. And then they would have leads. The leads you could choose they would have them a little, tiny little vial like this. So you could just choose the width of the lead. Leroy lettering was actually used, oh my gosh, I think it was one of those used actually a little before I came, because I was using press-on type when I came here, but this is how people would letter. They had a little stylus, and you would use the letter, you would use the stylus in these, oh my gosh, in these to make the shape. You could make the shape of any of this from this lettering guide. And that really is from the past, because we don't use this. And like I said, I never used it myself, although people said, oh, you can use a Leroy lettering. And I said, by the time I came, they had what we call press type, which is a type that you cut it out and you press it on. So it was printed type on some like a sticky back paper, and you could cut it out, peel it off, and press it on your drawing for labeling. So you had all of that. Dissecting tools. Oh my gosh, these are for old microscopes. Oh my gosh, these have to be attached to a microscope. So you have you have your old microscope lights. This is a microscope taken apart. So you can see the parts of it, and I actually would travel with these. Oh, I would ship them sometimes or put them in my luggage. So wherever I went, I could draw with my microscope. And I just would undo it and carry it with me. So these are more little boxes. Again, boxes I save. These were for all these small ones. Were actually for insects. These are the little insect boxes, and they're all being thrown out. And they're all so useful because they're the right size, but they're switching to metal so that they don't use any kind of paper. I guess that was not archival paper. This is probably, oh, this is newer stuff. Well, this is newer. It's newer, to me it's newer, but does anybody know what this is? It's a Croy cartridge for a Croy machine, which is, that was the advancement. If I wanted to print out lines of type and didn't have to cut out each letter to press on, I would print it out on these cartridges went in a machine called a Croy machine, and you had wheels notched with the letter you chose, and you'd press a button, it would actually photographically put it in a line of film, and then as you kept pressing, it would extract it, and you'd have your printed out labels. And that's how I did all of my words. If I needed them for slides, I had to make my own. You had to make your own slides. So if you come over here, we can see, now we can see, these are pens that I used from the past. Again, these are the old, these are Gelates. And Gelate pens have the very tiniest, and these are the Crow quills. The Gelate pens had, I think, they had that too. Well, they had some of the tiniest pens I've ever seen. And the Crow quills came in a little later. And these are saved Gelate pen points. So all of these are Gelates in these little vials. And then I have some that are those old Spencerian ones that are, again, we don't need anymore. And then we have some calligraphy coins here. So I saved these ones that were gold. A Spencerian. So a lot of these, again, they're not made anymore. Yeah, these are really gold. Oh gosh, these are gold tipped. I think these are the ones that are 14 karat gold. I just save them, but many of these kinds of quills were used, well, they were used by calligraphers, and then illustrators like me took them over. But we use the really tiny ones. I would say I mainly used the ones that are this small, even this size or smaller. I didn't use big quills.
So,
So-
like 0.5 and 0.3s, or what would you wear?
Yeah, no, these are the, well, they were just had different numbers. This is the Gelat crow quill, which is very fine. Trying to find one. They were all bronze. So if you go to the newer ones, which are these are Hunt. So the newer ones are they're just a little kind of sturdier. These are the finest. And they were just made out of a regular steel. They weren't gold, bronze plated. These have a bronze coating on them, an actual bronze coating. And when they get dirty, they actually turn green. They get that color. So there's a little difference, even though they're both crow quills, which is a description of a fairly pointed tip, but it has a closed barrel. And the Gelats are still a little finer, but you can't. The company sold out. It's not Gelat anymore, so you can't really find the true Gelat quills anymore. You can find some similar ones, but they aren't quite the same as what they used to be made. And then you have the technical pens, I said, they're on their way out, unfortunately. Because again, computers have taken over this field. This is a field. This is a compilation of several artists' offices. Everybody said when they retired, "Here, take over my pen." So it's an accumulated assortment, not just mine, of pens with points. These are the points. These are newer points, so I still can order the points for them. Oh, and then we have some erasers. Let's see if anybody remembers these erasers.
Oh.
This is a typewriter eraser. A large version is over in the sculpture garden, which I'm sure a lot of people look at and go, "What is that?" It's a typewriter eraser. You know, they used to kind of turn a little more easily. Since this is probably 60 years old, it doesn't turn very well. So I saved those. There might be a few down in our supply cabinet. We've got these little, we call them burnishers, little stumps for burnishing pencil if you're doing graphite and you want to blend it. Oh my gosh, this is for pressing down that press type. Boy, when you wanted to burnish something, you use these to press your press type down, make it, and your Croy type, because you had long strips of it, which you then waxed, because they weren't sticky on the back. You waxed it and then you pressed it down on the surface. So I saved these. So useful. And again, these are more erasers for the for electric erasing machines, which have kind of gone out of style too. So I have those. Yes. But these, you can get these now. You can get these kind of erasers. People still get these
The
for.
gum eraser.
You can get gum erasers. Yeah. This was one of the last electric erasers I bought. And where is this made? I'm trying to see where it would be made. I'm looking at it. Where is this made? Oh, it says right now, it says Spain. Well, interesting. Then it says made in China, but then it was fabricated in Spain. So this is one of the last ones I bought that was electric, where I was buying the replacements for it. But hey, what do you need erasers for if you're digital? It's really looking through magnifiers. Yes, hand magnifiers. This is an interesting one. It's a reducing magnifier. What it does, if you want to look at a drawing you've done full size and you want to see how it reduces for publication. You put that over it because it reduces everything down to make it smaller, and you go, oh, I see how small my lines are going to get. I can change the line weight. That's why you had these reducing. Why would you have a reducing lens? That's what it is. It's a why would you even have it? Now this is a magnifier. So this is a magnifier. That must be this one. No, that's a reducing one. Apparently all these are, yeah, these are all reducing lenses. Well, this is the magnifier. So you used a little hand magnifier like that. To look at things up close. Oh, every drawer has something in it. Brushes from whatever era. I do use, oh gosh, some of these brushes from everywhere. Everything, this is to clean off your table, but you have all kinds of tiny brushes. I use brushes, very, very fine ones. Well, we would paint with them, but I use them for pen and ink.
Do you prefer like boar hair?
Sable. I like the sable brushes. The sable hair brushes, which they took off the market for a while because what they didn't realize was the term sable is loosely used when people import these things. It sells better if you say sable. It turns out that the sable brushes that they were actually selling were some kind of a weasel that wasn't even endangered or anything. It was like, yes, it was the tail hairs of whatever this was that was not even really endangered. I mean, but it was the tail hairs, and it was like, okay, so we're using something where we have the tail of an animal, but it's not truly a sable. It's not an endangered species. So they took it off the market for a while. Then they did some calculations on the science, and they said, oh, okay, it's okay to use this particular animal. So that's why you can now use sable brushes again, because they're just called sable. And maybe they're from a type of sable, but it's not the kind of sable that we say is endangered, so that we can actually be assured that we're safe. Now I get into some leads. Again, no longer made, totally vintage. These are leads that were turquoise. The company was bought out, and I think it's another name now. Is it Beryl? Maybe it's Beryl. You can still get these little leads. They might have a different name, but at least you can get them. So these are all different, but people don't really use these. Fine artists might use them for sketching. These are leads that, again, vintage leads that are not even reproduced at all. They're because what happened was these are made for use on drafting film. And what's interesting, they're called polycarbonate leads. It's made from a polymer and a carbon, polycarbonate, and it's made for use on drafting film only. Doesn't even make a line on paper, I've tried. These were always purchased by architects who did all their old drawings on film, and they made blueprints and all this, and then it was also used by engineering draftsmen that designed all kinds of machinery. They would use drafting film, and they would use these. What happened? CAD, a computer automated drawing, came into being. This was all dropped. The last one, I think the last of these were made in the 80s. And the last one I found, let's see, I found some of these. I think these were made up until in the 90s for film, only for film. Yeah, they're made to fit in mechanical pencils, but they're not made anymore, and I do use drafting film, and I use these. So I've acquired a supply by calling around. You call architecture firms. And what happened was, see, the companies had their own brands. Filmograph. Let's see, that was That was eagle. That was the eagle. Oh, turquoise, and then it was eagle. Then Beryl bought it. So Beryl bought it right at the end, and then they stopped making it. So that was the very end. Stettler Mars made it. They made it up until I think '92, and it was gone. And then there was this series K, Mars Duralar. These were really nice, really rich black. So I still make drawings with these. Anybody that asks for, they want a halftone in this style, I've got the pencils and film. So again, these are all leads and leaded pencils that are again extinct. Oh, this is the replacement. Okay, here's kind of the replacement. Never gets as sharp. That's the only problem. It's the Mars Lumograph Black, made in Germany, and it's okay. I do use it for classes, but I say you can't get it as sharp as the ones like the Filmograph, and they don't have a lead. It's just a pencil. So the leads you can really sharpen. This is not even used. So I think these were purchased from a supplier, made drafting film, and they had some pencils, so they said, sure, we'll sell them. Now we get into dissecting. There's some dissecting tools in here, mixed with pens. Okay, we have a variety here. These are, again, this is someone else's office, but I have my own dissecting tools, all used for dissecting little tiny things. Oh, parts of a ruling pen. All these little tools. This one, made in Germany, and I think that is ivory. I hate to say it, but I think some of these are ivory tools. We had ivory burnishers at one point. So a lot of these, again, they're not made anymore, but they're very nice. Nice little tools. So I do keep all of these. Oh, this was great for reducing and enlarging. You could do ratios, proportional scales. I use it all the time. And all the tiny little specialized triangles. Those are really kind of old ones. Rulers. Well, rulers are rulers. We have the same rulers over the years. Yes, we have these old, we have old school rulers, and then we have newer ones. These are just general tools, but I found that there's a lot of old stuff in here. I said, oh my gosh, here's some very old, okay, these are old tools. I do use these for, oh yeah, I do use these occasionally, and this is for inserting into those. Definitely came from an office, so you can switch out tools. It's a nice little container. The tools. Oh, scissors and cutters. Oh my gosh. What people don't really use. We don't use these little tiny. These were just not even ever opened. These were for cutting stencils. And we had these little X-Acto knives that were for, you use them with these tiny blades to cut stencils for the ruby lith for a halftone drawing. You wanted to have the background drop out, so you would take your tiniest little holder for it, and you'd put these tiny, they were rotating swivels, so you could cut around your object, your drawing object, perfectly with these tiny little swivels. And then all of a sudden, printing changed, and you could do dropouts mechanically. You could do them on the computer. You could just drop out the background. And then these became obsolete. So again, they end up in a little package, in a drawer. Oh, I do remember using this. Yeah, with a swivel knife. Yep. That was my whole kit, and I would just travel with it.
That was great, Alice.
Anyway, I'm telling you all these